So today we're testing out the cameras on the brand new Samsung Galaxy S26 Ultra. This phone just came out and it has a lot of really cool tech like the privacy screen and a bunch of AI features. But as an art director and content creator, what matters most to me is the cameras. Now, full disclaimer, this video is not sponsored and I bought this phone with my own money, so I'm trying to stay as unbiased as possible and show you guys how this phone performs in real life shooting conditions. Okay, so first up, I'm testing the selfie camera. So the audio is coming straight from the device. Right now the sun is behind me, so the conditions are pretty challenging, and on screen it looks pretty decent. But you guys let me know in the comments how it looks. We got about half an hour left of sunlight, so let's walk around and see what kind of shots we can capture. So now I'm just shooting with the 12 megapixel mode in standard auto. This is pretty much what most people are going to be shooting with 99% of the time. This is also a really great test for the HDR capabilities because we have the sun right here shining into the camera, but you also have a lot of darker areas on the right here. So I'm really curious to see how this phone performs. Honestly, for a quick snap, I'm pretty impressed with this image. The HDR feels natural, and I feel like Samsung has really toned down the over-processing with this generation. I'm seeing some really nice light coming through these buildings over here, so I'm going to take this opportunity to try out the 5x telephoto and see if it's able to capture that light coming through. I think the upgraded telephoto lens produces great colors and contrast. It looks accurate without needing any additional edits. As this boat is leaving, I'm going to use the ultra-wide camera here to try and capture this shot as well. And I really just like how dramatic of a scene you can capture with the ultra-wide. Although there were no upgrades to the ultra-wide camera, I think the processing has improved. In fact, I really like the contrast and the overall look coming out of this camera. On the other hand, I am disappointed by the results from the 3x lens. I took a couple of shots as this boat was leaving, and yeah, the details just look muddy, the colors and contrast are pretty flat, and it just looks like these photos were taken from a smartphone 10 years ago. In contrast, here's a shot taken with the main camera, and you can see immediately how much more vibrant it looks and how much better the tones, colors, and detail are. Speaking of bad quality, I also tried the 30x zoom, but the image really doesn't look great. There's mushy details and over-processing to compensate. And looking on the phone screen, it looks pretty decent, but definitely you can tell it's a digital zoom and not optical. However, the 10x zoom did surprise me. These photos look much more natural compared to the 30x because they don't have that digital zoom look. So one of the biggest problems with Samsung devices in the past is the inability to capture movie subjects like kids or pets. With the new S26 Ultra, they actually added a hidden setting to completely solve this issue. So if you go into the settings and you scroll down to camera assistant, this unlocks a bunch of hidden features. But the one that I'm most excited to test out is under advanced photo mode controls. So here you can set minimum shutter speed. By setting this at a higher shutter speed, it allows you to freeze movement. So let's set this to 1/500 and test it out. So here I'm just gonna wait for people to ride by and see if we can capture and freeze that motion. It is a bit annoying having to dive into the menus to adjust this setting, but at least it seems like Samsung is listening to the feedback and hopefully they're working towards a more streamlined solution. So now I turn off the minimum shutter and I'm gonna put a comparison on the screen of how it looks with it off and on. So although this is not a fully controlled scientific experiment, it's still a good example to show that the minimum shutter speed is working and it's able to freeze motion better compared to the regular mode. Another new setting with the S26 Ultra is the ability to shoot in 24 megapixels. Once again, you go into the camera settings and you scroll down to camera assistant. And then from here, you scroll down to advanced resolution options. And here you can toggle on 24 megapixel resolution. And if you click into it, you can also enable the option to keep this resolution as your default. This is really useful so you don't have to keep switching it every time you want to take a photo. 24 megapixels really strikes that balance between image quality, resolution, and file size. Because 12 megapixel images can get pretty pixelated when you crop in. But with 24 megapixels, I can still crop in, reframe in post, and still produce a pretty clean image. But just keep in mind that only the main sensor can shoot in this 24 megapixel mode. And when you're looking at these images at a glance, it's kind of hard to tell the difference. However, when you're looking at a zoomed in crop like this example, you can see that the 24 megapixel image looks a lot more natural compared to the 12 megapixel. It is a bit softer, but it doesn't have as much overprocessing to the file. And for serious photographers, the real fun begins in the Pro and Expert RAW modes. This is where you're able to unlock those manual controls and to be able to adjust your ISO and shutter speed. And although the Pro mode is really useful to have, I don't typically shoot in this mode because for one, you're only limited to either 12 or 50 megapixels. And the Pro mode RAW files are also pretty noisy. Check out this comparison in Lightroom between the RAW file from the Expert RAW mode as well as the Pro mode. When zooming in, you can see the Pro mode file has a lot more noise in those darker areas. The Expert RAW file looks a lot cleaner, and those finer details are also more visible. In my testing, using the Expert RAW mode is really where you're going to be able to make the most out of this camera system. Because as you can see here, it allows you to use that new 24 megapixel mode, and when you click into it, you also have the ability to use the full 200 megapixel sensor. And personally, I've really been enjoying using this 24 megapixel mode. For example, let's take a look at this image in Lightroom. You can see slightly more dynamic range and color in the Expert RAW shot. Like in the sky, there is more warmth and details in the clouds. It's not a huge difference by any means, but when you're looking to post-process your image, having a good starting point is really important. Moving down into the darker areas like these buildings, you can see how much more noise there is in the Pro mode file. The Expert RAW definitely looks a lot cleaner. And there's also a really cool feature in the Expert RAW mode where you're able to dial in the settings that you use most often, and then you're able to save it as a preset. This is really useful for quick swapping between settings for various conditions. Moving into video mode on the S26 Ultra, Samsung has given the ability to use different LUTs for previews. Some of these built-in LUTs are pretty cool, however, I do hope they give the option to allow us to upload our own monitoring LUTs in the future. And for those who are really serious about video, Samsung also introduced the APV format this year. This is basically lossless recording and allows you to get the highest quality video possible. Personally, this is a bit too much for my workflow, and I'm fine with just shooting in the regular log mode. I'm happy to see that Samsung is adding these types of premium and professional features within this device. And for those who really want to take advantage of the video capabilities and capture more cinematic footage, an ND filter is a must for setting your shutter speed to get that blurry movement. This set from Freewheel comes with 4 ND filters that magnetically attach to their case. Huge shout out to Freewheel for sending this out to me to test, but they did not sponsor this and they have no say in this whatsoever. But I have been using Freewheel VNDs on all of my lenses for years, and I can really vouch for the quality of their glass. They also have this anamorphic lens system that screws on to the back of the case with swappable filters to really bring your footage to the next level. Let me know in the comments if you guys want me to make a more in-depth video about this kit. Anyway, let's move on to some low light and night photography. We stopped by Linden's Street Pizza for a bite to eat, and I also took some test shots. The S26 Ultra was able to handle these scenes without issue, and you can really tell the increased aperture of the main and telephoto helped deal with these challenging conditions. Not only does the wider aperture allow half a stop more light, it also results in shallower depth of field for that natural bokeh. Then I went to Domino Park to test out some night photography. And as you can see, the auto night mode works really well and is able to capture the entire scene. However, it does look a bit too bright and unnatural for my taste. So instead I went into the Expert RAW mode and manually set my ISO and shutter speed. This way I can control the exposure and create an image that is a bit darker than what the phone produced in auto mode. I really like the way this image came out, and it looks much more true to life. As I was walking around taking more pictures, I noticed this similar trend where the S26 Ultra would really want to overexpose these night shots. Thankfully, it's pretty easy to just tap on the screen and adjust that exposure without needing to dive into Pro controls every time, but it's still a bit annoying having to do so. However, I do have to admit that sometimes the brighter exposure can work well. For example, with this plaza, there's this interesting overhead installation, and the brighter exposure really allowed this image to pop and let you see all that detail. Then I went onto this elevated walkway and I saw this really industrial looking playground down below. I used the ultra wide to capture this shot, and I was pretty impressed with the color and details. And to wrap up the night, I took some log footage and used the Freewheel anamorphic lens to see what kind of effect it could produce. The light streaks are pretty cool and fun to play around with. Combined with some color grading to the log files, this is a really great combination for cinematic footage. Now let's dive into Lightroom to pixel peep at some images. First up is this photo taken with the main camera in 12 megapixel mode. Zooming into the sun, you can see slight flaring, but it's not horrible for shooting directly into the light. Moving on to the darker areas like this bottom corner, there is slight noise visible, but again, not a huge deal. This next image was taken with a 3x lens, and honestly, at a glance, it is better than I expected. Compared to some of the other 3x images that looked a lot worse, I'm glad this one turned out okay. But you can tell there's still softness throughout the frame. The color and contrast are also not as vibrant as the main sensor. Now here is a 200 megapixel shot, and look at how much you are able to zoom in. Of course, this is still coming out of a tiny phone sensor, so I wasn't really expecting the sharpest of details. But moving into the corners, you can see a good amount of smearing and softness that I didn't notice in the 12 megapixel mode. Overall, 200 megapixels definitely has its uses, but it's not something that I would shoot with all the time. Now let's check out this night shot with the 5x telephoto. As you can see in the middle of the frame, the highlights are overexposed because, like I said earlier, this phone really likes to brighten night shots way too much. And although the rest of the frame looks a bit muddy, you can still see a good amount of detail in the brick, and the image overall looks pretty clean with minimal noise. Lastly, here's an ultra wide shot, and at first glance, I'm pretty impressed with this. Details look sharp with good contrast. However, the color is way off, as these two towers are actually blue in real life, and in this image, they are almost white. But zooming into the corners, the details still look pretty good with minimal softness. Okay, so that's pretty much it for this video. I am working on the full review of the S26 Ultra, so definitely subscribe so you don't miss it when it comes out. And let me know if you guys have any questions in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.